In this video, I'm going to try and compress and condense everything I've learned about people, communication and conflict into a 15-minute video. Everything a new manager needs to know in order to deal with conflict within their team. So what I'm going to show you is the disagree without drama pathway. Communication is the fundamental building block of a team, because if you don't talk, what do you have? As soon as the communication breaks down, we lose connection, we stop working together, we stop seeing each other as part of the same team. One part doesn't know what the other part's doing, and it all falls apart. So communication in teams is like proprioception, if I can get the word right. So proprioception is the awareness of how we stand within our environment. So some people who have a poor sense of spatial awareness, they can walk into walls, they can stumble into things. It's because they're not aware of where they are, where they end, and where the environment, the obstacles around them are. So that's what it's like with a team. If you don't know what someone else is doing, if you don't know what's going on there, all of these people end up working individually. We either duplicate things or the ball gets dropped and everything goes wrong. If we don't know how to disagree without drama, we're going to have poor communication, we're going to have fragile relationships, and the team's going to be divided. It's going to be a group of individuals who all want to do their own thing. If we can fix and we can create the environment where people can disagree without any drama, then we can have open communication, we have deeper relationships, and we can unify as one team. Now, the biggest mistakes that I see new managers making is, first of all, avoiding conflicts. Too difficult, I don't know what to do, I'm scared of it, so I just hope and pretend it goes away. The other is to be overly emotional or aggressive, or to impose solutions, so that two team members have a disagreement and you rush in and go, I'm going to be judge and jury. So the biggest problem with conflict, it's the operating frame that we have for conflict. So the operating frame that we have for conflict is deeply wired into our biology, because it's a biological response. We go into fight or flight mode. We either start fighting, in which case that we stop listening, or we go into flight mode and we stop talking. But either way, the communication breaks down, we lose connection, and that's where the relationship breaks down. And this is why the divorce rate is like about 50%. It's why 70% of business and partnerships end because of relationship breakdown. It's why a group of people who call themselves Christians, who all believe in the same thing, have 32,000 different versions of Christianity. Whatever we do, we're going to differ on certain points. And what typically the human race has done is set up different tribes, and they've treated people as enemies. It comes down to the operating frame that we use. And the operating frame that we use is that difference equals danger. 50,000 years ago, when we last evolved, different meant different species or different tribe. And either one of those was life-threatening. So we had to develop a bodily awareness that we had the fight or flight response, so that we could either kill it or we could run away from it. The problem is, in today's world, different doesn't mean danger most of the time. We're not dealing with a saber-toothed tiger. We're not dealing with a tribe that's come to rape and pillage our tribe. What we're dealing with is social problem that our biology is ill-equipped to deal with. What we need to do is we need to take a different operating frame. We need to remind ourselves that difference isn't danger. And actually, conflict is more like fire. Yes, it can burn, it can destroy, but it also has so many positive uses. It keeps us warm. It enables us to cook and do so many more processes that we use fire for. So that's the key frame. Now, when conflict happens, the first thing to do is, what happened? What was your response to that? Why is that important? And what is it that you really want? Often people don't know. Often conflict happens because there's an eruption. Typically, in my background is relationships, and it's someone's left the clothes out, someone hasn't tidied away their toothbrush. So there's an eruption, but the eruption is out of proportion to the situation. So it may be in a meeting, someone erupts suddenly, and it's because there's an issue. It's because there's something underneath the eruption that isn't about the clothes being left. It's not about the toothpaste being left out, or that is a hidden issue. The hidden issue, this goes back to Howard Markman's work, where he talked about there's between about 6 and 12 currencies. Currencies are things like, I want to feel loved, I want to feel cared for, I want to feel in control, I want to feel respected. All of these things, fundamentally, these are why people react. And the issue is this showing that you don't, so when someone leaves clothes on the floor, it's showing that they don't have respect for me. It's showing that they don't really care about me. That's the fear that's triggering the emotional reaction. So we can then translate this to, what was your expectation? Because if there's a conflict, then it's because your expectation was different than the reality that happened. Then we can look at, what's the belief that underpins that expectation? What do you believe about the world? What do you believe about this person? What do you believe about this process that makes you believe that this should happen? The common one is fairness. That's not fair. And so this operates on the assumption that life is fair. Most conflict is because we've grown up in different environments. We've had a whole journey that's led us to this point. Those different journeys create different assumptions, different beliefs. And that's a lot of what people react to emotionally. I love Joseph Campbell's work on the hero's journey. And he took the work of the monomyth, the idea that all great stories have the same structure. Star Wars was built on Joseph Campbell's breakdown of this work. When we come to conflict, everyone is the hero of their journey, and everyone else is a supporting character. The problem is, in someone else's world, you are a supporting character and not the hero. So understanding what is the narrative that's underpinning each journey is what enables you to understand where the problem came from and what the resolution can be. So a new frame for simple communication is, we have a need. If we express that need, we can work out a way of being able to meet that need, and then someone's content. There's a lot of work in non-violent communication about techniques of sharing your need. But first of all, we need to know what that need is. And so this is the hero's journey. It's understanding that the beliefs, the assumptions, the hidden issues, the currencies that we really want. Because most of what people want is respect. They want growth. They want love. They want attention. All of these things are not generally what we fight about, but we fight about the surface level. Here's a 4-step process. You start with calm. Because our natural biology takes us into fight or flight, we have to notice that reaction. We have to regulate our emotions. And we don't have time now. We're rapidly running out of time. But in breathing techniques, things like that, in order to regulate your emotion. And then it's about an attitude of curiosity. If you can look for clues, if you can listen deeply and understand what's not being said as well as what is being said, what's really being meant, and look for the mistaken beliefs, the flawed assumptions, the journey that someone's on, and the currency that they're looking for. Is it respect? Is it love? Is it belonging? So then when we're able to have a dialogue, Dan Weil talks about solve the moment before you solve the problem. Solving the moment is all about, can we just talk, not try and solve the problem, but just so you're talking, you're understanding what the real dynamics of the problem are. Then it's a collaborative. I understand this because you're coming from this perspective. You've had this whole background. I'm coming from here. Here's where we are. This is what I want. This is what you want. This is a problem that we can solve together. I talk about 7 levels of conflict. So conflict is, we often look at the communication, sometimes look at the concept, but there's what we say, there's the concept of what we're fighting for, there's the circumstances around it, what's happened, then what's the climate? What's the climate of our previous interactions been like? What's the level of connection? How trusting do we feel? The construct is about the whole operating frame is, this is how I see the world. This is my perception of this situation because this is my perception of the world. The highest level is congruence, where you reach that point of agreement, where you find that there's a problem to solve. As Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the level of which it was created. And so this is where conflict can help you to make better decisions. It can make you refine your thinking because it forces you to not stay at the same level, but it forces you to rise above that. What is the solution that meets all of these needs? Really what we're looking at is a then, is this is what A's goal, this is person B's goals, there's some overlap. Now, what's the solution that we can unify around? Because at the core of a team, the key point where people unify is around a transcendent identity. So the reason we join together in teams is because we can get something that we can't get on our own. When we unify, what we're really doing is we're creating, so here's my self-identity. So, for example, with a couple, we then become a couple. And in a workplace, we're becoming a team. And so we have these different levels of identity. When people say you have to give up your self-interest and you're being selfish, they're being selfish because the group identity doesn't interest them, doesn't have as strong an emotional pull as the identity of the team. And so the work of you becoming a unifier and a manager and a leader is to unify people. So when you look at great unifiers, people like Martin Luther King, Charles de Gaulle, Winston Churchill, they didn't have to have such great people skills because they had such a vision. If the vision is freedom, if the vision is equality, if the vision is fighting for our culture, for what we are, then you don't necessarily need as much people skills. But the clarity with which you can articulate that shared vision, shared purpose, is what's going to bond the team. So the old way of looking at conflict is we're going to cross swords and it's my way or your way. Okay, we're going to just go on separate paths. We're all on a whole journey and we're together as a team for a short while, however long that lasts. But while that lasts, this conflict is just us crossing paths. So in a nutshell, the key to conflict is about taking the fear out of it. It's about really deeply understanding. It's creating an environment of trust. It's then just taking conflict as if it's a problem and we're going to collaboratively solve this. So that's the Disagree Without Drama pathway.